Where are you from?
San Jose, California.
Okay.
I grew up in the punk scene, like going to shows there, and I think being in that space, in that city around the time, like, and I talk about like my hometown now with this sort of like bittersweet sense of like it's become like styrofoam, right? Because the .com era, like I grew up in that like the 90s, it was like becoming Silicon Valley, and then like it had this like big city feel, but like a small big city feel to it, and it felt kind of like, I don't know, like cozy for a while. And so I think that was really nice. It felt like a really unique place to grow up in around that time, like, and partially because there was like not a lot of stuff to do. Like there was a lot of stuff to do there, but it's like I wasn't like into tech, and so I ended up like finding this little alternative music scene, and like from there we ended up like my friends and I would go to shows in like Oakland and San Francisco, and like there was a huge culture there for music, obviously, and like in the punk world, obviously, like East Bay punk rock from like 80s and 90s was huge. So like I think being from San Jose and being in proximity to that part of the Bay Area had a huge impact on me, at least like culturally, and then probably musically as well. It was just in proximity to like way cooler places, even though I do love where I'm from.
Right. Okay.
Kind of hate what it's become, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. And then what do you think? Do you think being that close in NorCal to the punk scene and everything is really what brought you to wanting to be an artist? Like what brought you to, do you think, like being a creative?
It's just existential dread, bro. Like all of it. Okay. The burden of existence of having, corporeal form is what made me like need to be an artist, not even want to be. It was just like I had no other alternative but to just like write down my experiences, as a way of coping, honestly. Like I generally think more than anything, a lot of my strengths, and this is just my opinion, like I think I'm a much better lyricist than anything else as an artist, and I think a lot of that stems from like growing up like most people had a lot of feelings, right? And one of the very first avenues of catharsis and I found, and it wasn't necessarily true catharsis because it was more of like a way of coping, was just, I learned how to just, journal like, furiously to like get feelings out. Right.
Right.
And, from that I ended up developing like, at least in my teenage years, my adolescence, like a love of poetry and writing, and like, what I ended up doing a lot, and it's funny like looking back at it now, because I genuinely had like the whole, like the trope of like being like older and like looking back, it's like I walked 15 miles in the snow both ways experiences to go to school, because really what it was is like, especially when I got to high school, I would take the train to like in the Bay Area we don't have like the Metro with Caltrain, and so same thing basically, right? Except ours is red. But I would take like, that like, I don't know, 15, 20 miles from where the station was to my high school station, and then, go to class, whatever. But then my like route home would be like, I would walk like a couple, like 2 or 3 miles from school to the train station, take the Caltrain like back towards downtown San Jose, which is another like 15, 20 miles. Then from there, take the light rail. It's called VTA, like little mini train from that train station to the bus stop, and then take the bus stop like another like 5 miles home, and then walk like a mile home. So I had a lot of time to like write.
Yep.
Also fucking love trains, so it was like it was very like broody, like I just like I really love the romance, and I still do, and I still do love it, but like the quiet time and the like inherently reflective, for me at least, what I find inherently reflective like moments of being a passenger on a train, right? Watching everything go by, seeing the industrial parks, and a lot of like what feels like rustic pockets in these like urbanized environments, and like other random elements that you just find. Like it's a very interesting place for me. I love it. It feels very meditative for me. And so, but I would often write poetry, and just practice what was becoming a craft for me, like on those train rides, like for those few years I was doing it before I got my license. And in class too, because it's like I just didn't want to be there, and like I was dealing with a lot of teen angst, and you know, a lot of like additional angst unrelated to being a teenager. So like, again, it was not necessarily, to kind of full circle the question, like it wasn't necessarily just about being in Northern California, but specifically I think being in a position to where I had so much commute time and a need to just process all of the stuff I was experiencing, because there was a lot of it, just based on upbringing and what have you. So, but yeah, if anything, the Bay Area is like huge, friggin' like the distance from my school to home was massive. So I mean that that was definitely one of the circumstances, I think, so that helped in terms of that. So
who would you say your artistic influences are? Like, who did you relate to growing up?
Jesus, no, right.
Maybe.
Yeah. There was exclamatory, not, for what it's worth, anybody listening. But, like, I don't know, it's funny. When I was younger, like, before I got into music, which I got into it at, like, 16, like, I was in a really terrible, like, punk band called the Screaming Marys in high school, and we just played a handful of shows, right? And nothing, like, super crazy. But before that, I really wanted to be a writer, like a novelist specifically. And I think just for me, that's kind of how it was like, novel writing to songwriter pipeline was kind of my thing, right? And as I got into it, like originally when I was like 18, 19, 20, I fell into going to punk shows and found that world, and it was obviously very supportive of people like me who just kind of sucked at their instruments, because they'd still show up anyways, right?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, dude, that was awesome. And it's like the worst song I've ever written, and like, just singing out of tune because I didn't know how to sing, and like could barely play, chords and whatever. And like, I love it. I mean, that's kind of how I think it's supposed to be, ideally, right? Like, right. You play and you suck until you don't suck anymore, and like, and you go and support your friends, and like, maybe they suck or maybe they're better than you, but you're still just like, yeah, dude, we're in this community together, and like, that's how it's supposed to work, in my opinion, right? So like, at the time, to kind of give that context of like, we're all kind of terrible together, but we're all having fun and we're all young and like supporting each other, like, fuck yeah, community. The bands I was listening to were, they're now known AJJ, right? Ghost Mice at the time, a lot of folk punk artists, because my dad he's not a musician, right? But he liked folk music, like, Gordon Lightfoot was his guy. It was, people like, Gordon Lightfoot, Johnny Cash to a degree, literally just because I could sing in a similar register, it's like. And then, fundamentally, like, more pursuant to the world I was in at the time, the scene there, it was like, HHA, Ghost Mice, I said those already, Neutral Milk Hotel,
okay.
Artists like that, because it was really simple stuff, and it was like fun, and we could do it, and we could cover it, and like I said, we could be kind of bad and just, have fun with it and get better.
You mentioned having a band in high school, and then you mentioned, playing punk shows and stuff. So what would you say, do you have any memorable shows that you played at? Yeah,
I mean, quite a few. Like I said, the very first show I ever played was a venue I played a lot as a kid in San Jose. But and that was memorable because it was my first show, and it was just, like I said, really, really bad. Like, we did a horrible Black Flag cover.
Okay.
And like I said, I appreciate all the other kids at the time in the community, like, because they were just like, oh, that was sick, dude. And like, in retrospect, it's like, that was not sick, dude. But, you did it, yeah. That's really what matters, It was like at a Nickel City, this Nickel arcade that's no longer, they got shut down, unfortunately, in San Jose. But in the little party room, which like was horribly hot during the summers. And I ended up putting a hole in the wall there once. But, I digress. Like, yeah, I mean, so like I said, I started going to shows, right? And then, made friends, met people. And then, from learning that one Gordon Lightfoot song, and it was like, I learned how to play open chords on an acoustic guitar, and like, just suddenly I could do this. And I'm like, oh, this is just folk music. This is crazy. Like, hell yeah, dog. like suddenly the world opened up to me musically. And this is before I decided I wanted to like do music, be a musician. I was like still, trying to be the brooding, black coffee cigarettes writer guy, which I still romanticize to this day in spite of not smoking for a long time.
But do black coffee.
100%.
Totally do the black coffee.
No, dude, yeah.
Super brooding.
I love it. And it's like, sometimes it doesn't actually feel like a choice. It's like, oh, this is like an endemic to who I am as a person. You know what I mean? But it does, I don't know, it feels very good. And in high school, like, I was just like, I loved that, like, I'm an artist. Like, I loved that, like, wanting to be that person so badly. And then, like, writing poetry that was just inherently angsty. And, like, some of it may have been okay. Most of it was probably on the level of, like, just teen angst you would expect from someone like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like classic, like hindsight 2020, like never as good as you think it is, especially when you're 16. Like, no offense if anybody's 16 and actually listening to this, but
No, full offense. Full offense. You don't know anything. But just know you might become what you've always wanted to be by the time you're in your 30s.
Yeah. It is full of regret and whimsy. No,
Yes.
No, dude. But yeah, like, so to answer your question about memorable shows, like, I ended up, making a band with, some friends I'd made in that world, in the punk community at that time, and like, called Children of the Information Age.
Of course.
Yeah, and like,
Next.
100%. Yeah, our EP was like a guy with a TV for a head giving the middle finger. I forget what the fucking name of it was, like fuck you something or other.
Of course, it's a TV with the middle finger. I would hope it says fuck you somewhere.
Yeah, it was like, or fuck the 20%. I don't remember what it said. It was something like along those lines, I can't remember. It also may have been "We Sound Better Live." That might have actually been I can't really remember because that was the joke we said. Is like we're a better live band.
Kind of like the Sex Pistols. Yeah.
Yeah, too. I could also barely play my instrument, so.
Oof.
Yeah, no. So, and that was like at the time, like we called it a folk punk band. I remember this like reviewer, like from one of the San Jose Mercury News or whatever, there was like a music column, and he just was like, I don't know if these guys are punk, because then it gets, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of like, I don't know if these guys are actually punk, or what even that means, because like then you go down this rabbit hole of like, what is punk, what's my punk to your punk, da-da-da-da-da, I don't know, they're pretty good, and then that was basically it, so it was a weird review, and I just remember like, being like, well, that's cool at least, so.
We're here.
Yeah, and like, again, that was at the time I was like, very happy to be playing live. It was enthralling, and it was like the best feeling ever. Because like, if you're any kind of musician, I'm sure you've had those moments. Like it's an incredible feeling of flow.
Yep.
Right to play and perform live. And that's really what kept me coming back to it. Right. And so, the band itself is, we were not very good. And especially looking at some old footage, like for curating stuff. Like I said, it's. At the time, I thought it was really, really good. Like, oh yeah, we're like punk rock. I had like a mohawk and my battle jackets and shit playing live, and then it's like, oh, this is terrible. But it was fun, And like to answer your question about like notable shows with that band specifically, like there's a couple key moments, but the one that was just kind of cool, I think, was we ended up like playing this gig in a mobile video game truck.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was like promoting this like deer hunt, this like hunting game. And it was, like, fucking hilarious, because it's, like, you have a bunch of little, like, punk rock kids who are obviously very clearly not into this, like shit, and they just, like, mobbed out to come see us play in this, like, 18-wheeler, like, trailer converted into, like, a video game promotion where you're just, like, hunting, big game hunting, and we're just, like, and we used to wear these, like, it looked like little rude boy outfits, right? Like, just black, black tie, like sport coat, yada yada yada, because our name abbreviated to CIA, so we just pretended to be like Secret Service or CIA agents.
That's cute.
So we're just like in there, like in our little, we got a blue stand-up bass with pink strings, like a mandolin player and 2 acoustic guitars, and us singing about like politics and like loving each other. And there's a bunch of like green-haired punk kids like just like singing along, and also like shooting orange shotguns at a screen. It was a fun show. It was really fucking weird.
I love that.
Yeah, so that was definitely a memorable one. Other just notable things with them, like, just experiences I'm grateful to have had, like writing some more positive stuff and getting feedback like, hey, this really helped me, like, thank you, stuff like that. So, it was cool. And the basement shows, those are always like just, it felt a very beautiful part of time in my life, just to be a part of that community, to like be formative,
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the ones that stick out the most, just for weirdnesses.
I love it.
Sick.
Okay, and then on that note, I know that you're coming out with an album,
Mm-hmm.
and Growing Up, Growing Out. Can you tell us a little bit about how did that album come to be? Like, what made you want to release this album now?
Yeah, fuck, dude, yeah. It's so funny, it's like I knew ahead of time, but it's like it's such a big ass question now for some reason. It's
like an open ender, and you're like, what?
Well, it's crazy because it's like the album itself has kind of been in the works for a long time, like almost like 10 years. Like I've had those songs like, out or back, back cataloged, I guess. And like, most of my life has been spent playing shows and being a musician, and as you know, right? I moved down here in 2000, or moved down from the Bay Area to, the greater LA area, right? The Inland Empire specifically. The fringes of LA County.
Oh, yeah. Fringes.
Just to be authentic,
Yeah.
I mean, Pomona is in LA County, but I don't know if Angelinos would consider Pomona, like, it's not LA, it's like, you're your own thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's like, we don't talk about that one.
We don't. They have a lot of big trucks out there, and yeah. It has its own little weird. It has its own little scene.
It is. Yeah, and it's great,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like Burbank, where you're like, you don't, until you're in there, you don't realize there's a lot of alternative people there. And you don't,
And it's cool, right?
Yeah, it's cool. It's like a little secret. It's a little secret hub.
I love it. No, I mean, even when I moved back to Upland, it was like, oh, dude, this is, like, we talked about it. It's like, oh, this is just like, there's a lot of, like, retired punk rockers here. Like, I love this.
Yeah.
And also, like, damn, I'm old, bro. Like,
I gotta start a family. Okay.
Flannels and Dickies shorts with
Yeah.
low top chucks till I die. No.
Amazing.
High top chucks, I guess. But anyways, like, it's, like, like I said, the album's been a long time coming, and so when I moved down here, I hadn't written any of these songs yet, right, in 2013. And it, after CIA broke up, a couple years went by, or I guess like a year went by realistically. And I ended up making another band in San Jose, called Flippin' European Mutts, and that was like a third wave ska punk band, like kind of, traditional, I suppose, if you'd say. Very like 90s sound, a lot of fun. And we played a bunch of shows all over the Bay Area. Ended up winning a battle of bands in San Francisco in like 2014, I think, 2012 or 2013. I don't remember, somewhere around those lines. Like it was good. And had a lot of good experiences with those guys, and probably one of the best shows I've ever played in my life, like to date at least, where I just had the like ultimate experience of flow, and like I was just in the present moment that like I just felt like it was crazy. It was like just pure awareness. It was literally probably the best show I ever played in my life in terms of like how I experienced it. But like when I moved down, I was still playing with those guys, and that was back in like 2013. And so I would like commute I would take the megabus. I would do my classes because I transferred down here after doing like the 4-year plan. What was it I think I was at community college for like 4 or 5 years. I don't actually remember. I think it was like 4 years.
Okay.
Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I fucked up a bunch in high school. I had to like catch up, and also didn't know what I wanted to do because again I was going to be a writer, and then it was like, oh, let's do music, cool. That was the click, and so I did that. Transferred down here after like a gap year, where I was playing with those guys, and and then would take the megabus on the weekends to go play shows up north, right? And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was fun. And so eventually that fell apart. Just I was writing for that band, and I was writing even when that band broke up, and kind of honing my craft and like really learning how to write as I was studying music, because I never did as a kid,
Right.
I never really had anything. My parents gave me a guitar at 14 because they were like, this kid is not an athlete. He's not really like an academic. We need to give him something. And so they just gave me a guitar at 14, right? And
he's none of those things, and he's mentally ill. He needs something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is pretty much,
Yep.
like, I gave myself writing because I was just like, I don't know how to do anything with feelings. And then, and then I was like, oh, cool, let's just marry these two.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I said, as I was learning how to be a musician or, and expand beyond the punk world, right? Studying theory and going to school for it. It's like, I was also writing and trying different things and, learning, what I liked and what I didn't like, what my strengths and weaknesses were and all that sort of stuff. And by extension, like, I think part of that process is also like learning very, very slowly what my own voice is as a musician, as an artist, right? Because like, you emulate, right, a lot. And that's exactly what happened. I, would write in different styles and, and this is part of just general artistry, like, riffing on other people's, motifs and all that sort of stuff. So, and, all that was happening. And then, I made that other band, with my friends and, got to write much better music as a result of having studied it, right? Which is, I think, a big part of the reason, on top of them being excellent musicians and, like, we gelled, together. And in spite of my own, diva bullshit, because oh god, I was such a fucking asshole. Like, because I was like, oh, I'm studying music and and like, and they were just as fucking good as I was, you know what I mean? And like, we worked together as a band. That's how it's supposed to be. You're basically a little family, right? Having said all that, I for myself know I was a better writer after studying music. Go figure. So, so that helped. And so when that band, eventually broke up. And ended, I had already been writing and I had a bunch of stuff, back cataloged, and I was now down here writing and unsure of what I wanted to do, because like I don't come from money, I was, parents are working class, but thankfully we're in like decent paying jobs. So like, I didn't really want for much, but but I'm like, we're working, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you need to work, kid. Like, you can't just like go for performance, da. So like, I ended up like doing, music business at Cal Poly, music business combo. It's like, I needed the job, right? And, all the while I was still writing. And so eventually, the album is really a result of, years of just stuff I've had. And, my most, my next eventual project, which was Inappropriate Things, right, writing for that band. And, obviously none of that story can get told without the ensuing year after I graduated, right, which like spawned a lot of this content. And most of it was already there to begin with, but, some of it was, directly the result of like, my mental health struggles, right? That started really coming to the surface at that point in time, like 2015, 2016. Because I didn't have any bands I was working with, like, exclusively at that point in time, like my last year or two of undergrad. I did a lot of, like, one-off shows with people. Like, we had this, like, little project. It's just, like, fun, dumb projects you do, as a musician, like Curtis and the Cupcakes, right? This one, we just played a handful of shows, and it was, yeah, just for fun, just dumb shit like that, or like,
so cute,
or when I would come and see my family back in San Jose, I'd like I did like a project, put a little group together for it was like a Mercedes Benz. What it was this is like a really random gig. It was like a Chaucer fan club, and I put together like, basically like a weird quartet that did a lot of like jazz combos for this like swanky like cocktail party, and then like we did like jazz, dance. It's just stuff like this, just gig work basically as a musician.
Yeah.
So, but eventually, when those mental health struggles started coming out, I moved, after I graduated, and even before that, but it really like came to a head like 6 months after I graduated, as you know. since you were there, like, when I went back home to San Jose for like 7 months, convalesced, and then knew I just kind of needed to come back here to do music and like be a musician in LA and really experience what it was like to like play shows here and like have that sort of experience of being a working musician and having a day job and doing the band thing at night. And that's exactly what I did when I made Inappropriate Things with a buddy of mine I met at Cal Poly as a drummer. And I think this, but like, for the record's sake, it's like we ended up coming up with that name because it was on my like discharge paperwork, from the last time I was released from the psych hospital, because they made the comment that I was laughing, at inappropriate things, or like inappropriately at, just in general.
Yep.
Which to me does not seem like noteworthy, quite frankly, because like I don't know who in 2024 or at that point even in 2016 like doesn't have some dark sense. You know what I mean? Like
yep.
it's not like it's like a novel thing,
Right.
So I was just like, that's weird, but yeah, like so, I'm sure I can get into that in a second, but it's like. Long-winded answer. It's like that. The album is like the culmination of like the last 10 years of my life, basically, and all these different projects and songs I've written, and like encapsulates basically everything from when I was like 26 to now, and a lot's changed in then, and I would like to think most of it has to do and resonates with the coming of age. Ethos, right? Because that's kind of what it's been for me, in all these different bands, right? Coming to age, coming of age as a person, as a musician, right? Coming to take responsibility and, for my own adulthood and livelihood, all these things that come with adulthood, which, is inherently scary, but like ultimately beautiful and freeing. I think that is really where it's coming from fundamentally. And like, so that's the answer. It's a long answer, I suppose. So.
That's perfect. Okay, and I know that you're going to pre-release a few songs from that album. What are the songs that you're pre-releasing?
Train Tracks, which is honestly probably the most simple lyrical song I've ever written. I've written in a very long time. What
made it so that you wanted to write Train Tracks? Like, was it your love of trains that we talked about earlier?
Yeah. So when we were, I realized this a long time ago, but like going through the recording process, I was like, I have a lot of songs with train references. I joke about it, but I do really like trains. Like,
yeah, this man used to, when they played Train Tracks live with Inappropriate Things, they did have a train whistle. They would utilize on stage.
We no longer have one on the album, but we go yell choo choo.
Yeah. So just get ready for that.
Trains are cool, man, dude. Okay, I'm promoting it. Like,
hell yeah.
I haven't been in a long since I was a kid, but I used to fucking love it, dude. It was the train museum in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I think they had the one from Back to the Future Part 3, and like I always loved it. And it was like, it's not like a core memory, but it's so wholesome. I just fucking love trains, bro. I don't know. Trains are fucking cool.
I love it. Okay, so like Train Tracks kind of like is like feeding that like inner whimsy, right? Like
sort of. So
okay,
legitimately, like it wasn't about my weird interest in them.
You're like slightly manly autistic interest in trains.
Yeah, like I said, I think genuinely what I love about them is they have this like legitimately like we're going on a train tangent here.
Okay.
Yeah, this train is bound for glory.
Amazing.
I think what I love about them specifically is the romance of them and then the poeticism. And hear me out.
Choo choo. Okay.
Not like an actual romantic interest, but there's
okay.
The transient nature of them,
mm-hmm.
right?
Train.
Yes. Transient nature of trains and the ability to. Like I said earlier, the inherent reflective quality that comes from being a passenger on a train, having space within that compartment to walk around and be in motion while also being in motion. It for me, it feels, I don't know, incredibly poetic in some regard, and it's probably has a lot to do with again how it helped me develop that capacity for introspection, right? In there before smartphones and all that sort of stuff, and and watching the scenery go by. And also while seeing over time, especially because I consistently had to take them, seeing things change out of the window, like over a long term. I think the length of travel time was and is very helpful for reflection, and it's beautiful to me. And I think I just really like, all of the subtle motion of cars moving and the swaying of it all. Eventually too, you can, chat up people as well. That if you're on a longer ride, plus I used to take long distance trips with like my dad. Occasionally, I've done a couple of those. Like 24 hours plus. And like seeing the countryside, it's a very different perspective. Because it's the longitudinal aspect of it. So, yeah, it's maybe not necessarily the love of the method of transportation itself, but I think what it represents to me, fundamentally in like an artistic sense. So,
okay, I like that.
Yeah, it feels very not longitudinal, but like there's a stoicism about it to a degree. For me, at least, maybe not stoicism, but like this longevity and how long it takes to do things. And it feels somewhat like passively intentional.
Got it.
Yeah, if that makes sense. Like,
no, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I gotta get somewhere. It's like no, we can take our time.
Yep.
We can enjoy this and be present for it and really connect to. In general, So, the song though, well, it's kind of more brutal. And it wasn't born out of any of that. When I was 14, my buddy ended up in a car accident and the other guy died. And it wasn't his fault. The other guy ran a red light and ended up T-boning my friend. And thankfully my friend just walked away with a scratch. The other guy, unfortunately, head on collision and, and so my buddy was necessarily very distraught, especially at that age.
Yeah.
And he was living in Fresno at the time. And so, I took the train up there to go see him. And again, everything I just said, happening, and for me, really reflecting on the nature of life. A lot of those stuff, and going up there to support my buddy. He was my best friend at that time. Since kindergarten, and and just being there for someone in that state of mind, and kind of being present.
Mm-hmm.
In a situation that I even now I was very ill-equipped to handle, but just knew I needed to be a friend, and we ended up just the moment that song really started for me at that point was we ended up just downing an entire industrial sized pot of coffee, and just we walked along these train tracks in Fresno in the middle of fucking summer, just cracked out on coffee after my friend got into a car accident.
Anne Marie's been waiting for a train